Okay, I think I'm starting. Um, the Battle of the Minds, which is sort of counterintuitive, seeing as I work in mental health, and I don't want to say minds are battling at all,
Mm.
but I sort of get it for this month. Not that Christmassy, but at the same time, um, yeah, I think we're about to have a little discussion around mental health, coming from different perspectives and experiences and things of that nature. So I suppose in that sense there might be a little battle, but I'm assuming that there'll be some common ground as well. So Philippa, do you want to start off, I suppose, introducing yourself?
Yes, thank you. So, welcome to the Battle of the Minds. I am Philippa. I am a mental health resource officer at Black Beetle Health. I am a doctoral student at the University of Wolverhampton. My thesis is around mental health promotion in Black and Asian communities in the UK. And today we will be, Lewis and I will be talking to you about certain issues around mental health or just, just a general conversation, nothing too deep they have to seriously take in. It's just a light conversation, probably throwing some tips or so in the end. But yeah, thank you for joining us.
Yes, and again, or not again, I'm Lewis. I work in mental health. I was a master's student. Hopefully, will be a doctoral student one day. But I did my research on queer people of color, especially around gay men and how sexuality and race intersect and how that can influence mental health outcomes. So that's why we are here together today. Um, I also work for Black Beetle Health. Usually I am behind the scenes. I do a little bit more around policy and research. So I'm the one snatching the data and seeing what we can do with it and seeing how we can apply it into other sort of practices and things of that nature too. So yeah, um, Philippa.
Mhm. We have-
Um,
we actually have a question here
mhm,
in the box. It says,
yeah.
how, I think you should definitely answer this because be working in the well-being sector, you must come across, this kind of issue. How heavily do you think that queer people of color have been affected with the series of lockdown across the UK? This is definitely for you, Louis.
Yes, so I feel like this is quite a hot sort of topic at the moment. I think queer people of color are always affected when there's changes, just like everybody else, but especially because they meet at an intersection of race, sexual orientation, even gender, everything else. Um, I think in terms of our mental health, I'm 1000% not talking on behalf of everybody else. However, I also understand that there are lots of people who live physically in areas where they may not be around other queer people of color. And that can be very problematic if we are constantly being told by the government to keep our backsides at home. So I can only imagine as well how challenging it can be for queer people of color in terms of just, any mental health challenges that they may already have being exacerbated. So mood, like low mood, anxiety, things like that as well. And on top of that, I think even with the Black Lives Matter movement that was happening within the pandemic too, maybe not having as much support with others that look like them or share similar experiences with them can also really impact um, what has been sort of gone in with mental health in that sense too. So yeah, I think we are affected. We are a minority, and we are as vulnerable or more vulnerable, I suppose.
I would add to that while others are going through these issues, it's best to stay in contact with people, as in
Mm,
through social media, through messaging others, staying connected with other people is very important, especially if you're a person of color and you know the pressure of being part of the LGBT community and being in that culture, African culture or Caribbean culture and traditions where, they don't really approve of the LGBT community generally. So it's best to stay in contact with others that are a part of your community as well, and people that that will support you and help you get through this. And there's also a part of look, it's also important to look up on YouTube. There's some really good relaxation techniques as well for anxiety. Me personally, I've used the anxiety techniques on YouTube. It's called progress muscle progression. I don't know if anybody know of that YouTube, but if you go on Black Beetle Health on Instagram, you will see that we did that last week. A couple of weeks ago, we uploaded a video which I created, and well, I didn't create the video, the post, and I put in the YouTube link for anxiety, and it's really good. It's helped me a lot. So, how have you coped during COVID, Lewis?
I'm one of those people where I am happier when I'm busy. And disclaimer, although I am a little bit more visible on social media, I definitely feel like I'm 75% an introvert. So staying at home has not been the biggest challenge for me. There's still levels of loneliness there. And I think, especially in periods of isolation, even I know, even though I'm introverted, that there still needs to be a sense of like togetherness and things like that. I'm lucky enough as well to be working for some organizations where I am with lots of people all the time, whether it be my clients at the NHS or doing workshops in sort of other organizations as well, especially around with other queer people of color. I think that it's been, I think that's also been really helpful in terms of my mental health. I also think, which might be controversial, space has been quite important too. So something that I always think about is how we as queer people of color connect with others. And the majority of the time, it's like you either go clubbing, you meet somebody, or you date and you meet someone in that sense. And now it's kind of like, you can't really do those things. So how else do we connect with others? And having the space to sort of think about that and just like kind of refocus on how you connect with others has also been super important to me. Just being able to send messages to be like, just checking in, you okay? How's it going? How's your mental health?
Yeah.
Things like that as well is super useful. And obviously it will be reciprocated. And yeah, I think that's how I've been sort of dealing with everything, which is just getting through it and trying to be sociable at the same time.
There's a message for you, Lewis, where it says,
I'm being attacked. Bloody hell.
what things do you have in place to help you manage your mental well-being and stay productive during these periods of isolation?
Well, I have 3 jobs, so that keeps me on my toes. I mentioned, and I just went off on a tangent, but for me, being busy makes me is when I'm at my happiest. So I don't just do a 9 to 5 sort of job situation. I'm sort of back to back all the time. We've had meetings on a weekend as well. Like there's just a lot that's going on. So I kind of work hard. I don't play as hard as I would like to, but I think that's mainly due to the pandemic as well. But I also just have no shame now in sitting around and doing absolutely nothing. I will literally I'll literally go to my bed after a day of work, like even after this session, and I will spend 2 to 3 hours scrolling on TikTok. And I will not feel any way about it either because my mental health. I will, if I want to do it, then I'll do it. I think also one thing that's quite important is sort of making the most out of what we've got at the moment, like currently. So, the other day I graduated and it was virtual, and obviously it's very different to going in for the ceremony, but I still went in that day, and I was silly enough to not book the next day off from work, so I had to go into work feeling
Yeah.
some sort of way too. But you know, just trying to make things more exciting with some of the limited resources that we have at the moment has been really good. So, what about you? You seem to be asking a lot of these questions. So,
Well,
what's going on your end?
well, the question was imposed to me as well. I guess with me, I guess apart from my academics, because you know the pressure when you have academics to do a dissertation and thesis, you're not doing it, but it's on your mind to
Yeah, I
do.
mean, yeah.
Yeah, but it's on your mind even though you're not doing it. But apart from academically, I guess I do spend a lot of time on
Hmm.
tasty. I do. Even though I'm Jamaican, Jamaican food has always been cooked in the house. We
Mm.
try to navigate from that from time to time to try something new. And
Hmm.
I'm more into um looking at desserts and cakes and seeing how certain things are done. And I have to say that I am literally an Instagram junkie.
Yeah, yeah.
Like would say out of all the apps on my phone, Instagram is the most one that I actually go on.
Hmm.
Because fashion, especially
Hmm.
Kylie Jenner, I like the way she dresses. I
Kylie
do.
Jenner, how dare you?
I like the way she dresses. So I'm literally on there just looking at her, giving me ideas to, when I am finally get my act together or doing, giving me ideas on how I need to be, how I want to be. And I would say I watch a lot of comedies as well.
Hmm.
I do watch a lot of comedies on TV. I guess Netflix, I will have to say, I hardly watch natural television.
Mm,
Always Netflix, go straight on it. I don't want to see anything
1,000%.
else.
I don't want no adverts. I don't want to have to wait next week for an episode. I want to watch it when I want to watch it as well. I'm obsessed with Girlfriends at the moment. That's what I've been watching.
I'm trying not to watch Girlfriends right now till I have full time. Just actually, I'm gonna get a bit more serious now. I think because I do have anxiety, and I think sometimes the issues that girlfriends, the series start to act about, it can
Mm,
have a little bit of triggers in some people, and I think
mm,
some topics it triggers me, so I tend to just keep away from it now till I'm in a better mental state of mind
mm,
to watch. So I watch something a bit more light that doesn't really go on those deep issues, even though they're very common light holiday movies, or sometimes I like to watch certain episodes on the Big Bang Theory because,
mm-hmm.
and yeah, some stuff like that I do. But for those out there who probably doesn't even like watching TV, I guess you can try looking up to do if you can draw, do some art, order some paint from Amazon, order some appliances which can be very cheap on
Mm-hmm.
Amazon, and just probably improve your skills and your art if you love to do art or poetry or creative writing.
Yeah, I'm definitely on board with that. I mean, you just reminded me when I first heard of the first lockdown back in March, I went to W.H. Smith's and I bought like paper, some watercolors, and some pencils as well. I went to Sports Direct and I bought like 18-pound trainers because I was like, let's go. Amazon, I bought like a little pull-up bar.
Ooh.
Um, Exercise has been really important. I'm sitting next to a stationary bike at the moment,
Mhm.
which has been obviously very handy, especially when the gym had closed down as well. I definitely like to use exercise as a way of just buffering, especially around anxiety. I feel like ever since I did my master's, I know what anxiety feels like now. And
Yeah.
I think exercise is definitely one of those. So I always like to think of it as sort of burning the anxious energy. So I'm an early riser. I wake up at 5 in the morning to go to the gym and sort of like get everything out of the way, but also to prepare myself. But one thing that I will mention too, especially around anxiety, and especially at being at home, which is what I tell clients a lot of the time, is to be careful of your caffeine intake. I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of people will go into the office, or rather have a cup of coffee, leave out to go to the office, probably have another one, things of that nature. You get really used to a certain amount of caffeine, right?
Mm-hmm.
However, I'm just gonna keep it real. When you are in the office, you grinning your teeth and being nice to everyone burns a lot of energy.
Yeah.
So if you're drinking all this caffeine and you're at home and you don't need to interact with others as often, you've got all of that caffeine going inside of you, and that increases a lot of anxious symptoms, like the physical ones. So, the shakiness and heart palpitations and all that kind of stuff too. So if you're somebody that is at home a lot more and you're not in the office and you're still drinking the same amount of caffeine as you were before the pandemic, and you think that anxiety is an issue, cut that down first, because it
Yeah.
will definitely help. If you're sitting around doing nothing, then you don't need 4 or 5 cups of coffee in a day.
Mm-hmm.
And some people will. And it's just raising that awareness. If you are if you're drinking coffee at like 5 or 6 p.m., you're not going to sleep at 9 p.m. And if you
No.
are going to sleep at 9 p.m., then I would suggest you go to your GP, because there is something that is not really there right now. Um, what are there? I feel like there's tons of questions being shot.
I
Um,
know. Yeah. Play hard. What is Lewis's idea of fun?
okay, well, everybody should know that it can be quite triggering to ask a gay man what they do for fun, because fun means something completely different. However, because this is a family show, I'm assuming that fun means things like watching Girlfriends on Netflix, practicing doing makeup more. I make a lot of TikToks. I make so many TikToks at the moment, but I'm too scared to show any of them, so they're all private and they're all in drafts, really. Um, what else do I do for fun? Uh, I don't. It's lame, but I love sleeping.
Yeah.
Like, that's like, people are like, but Lola's. I'm like, yes, yes. I don't, because I'm so used to waking up so early. 7 o'clock for me, 7 a.m. is like a lion. Like, that's like, whoa, like this is crazy. So sleep is definitely a lion for me. I'm trying to think, that's all the fun you guys are getting. Too damn
Yeah.
nosy.
There's no other fun.
No.
I normally sometimes I put on YouTube and I put some Jamaican songs on.
Oh yeah.
They can be Jamaican songs can be really dirty and
I
raw.
know the first thing that came to mind was Spice. That's why I was like, are you spinning on your head top at home? Is that what your fun is? Like, what's going on
Oh,
there?
do not try that at home, folks. Um, yeah, I play a lot of Jamaican music. It just gets me in the mood and gets me bumping, and that can actually help you distract your mind from anxiety as well, I think,
Mhm.
and depression. Bumping your head, thinking about something different, even thinking about something dirty is a good distraction away from the worries.
I mean, again, what organization I'm working for, I'm like, this one isn't about sexual health, but you are very right about that as well. All distractions can be good. One thing that I'm going to mention, which has nothing to do with sex at all, but you just reminded me, a lot of people are decorating their places a lot more. And like, have you noticed a lot of people have like a lot more lights, like not even just outside the house, but like in their rooms. I am now one of those light people. I have a diffuser, cheapy little diffuser from Amazon, put some peppermint oil in there. Woo, you just walk in and you're just like, amazing. So it still feels like a different space, even though you're inside your own place.
I've been willing to buy a diffuser before. I think it's really good.
Yeah, and you can get the ones that have like that change lights and everything as well. So depends on how you're feeling. Put a little bit of scissor on in the background. It's amazing.
That's a great idea. I think I might actually do that.
Yeah.
Turning on it says, what are some of your triggers, if you mind sharing? What other tools do you use to manage those triggers? So my trigger is certain issues on probably watching stuff on TV is mostly a lot of my triggers. Because you have some things that are on TV that actually hits you at home. And I think that can trigger me a lot. And I tend to switch away from things that I know that might trigger me. That's a good starting point. Don't watch something that's going to trigger you at all.
Mhm.
And some of the triggers I have is probably based on home life, family, relationships, and it triggers me to think about the past, which you shouldn't be thinking about the past, but sometimes anxiety a lot comes from the past, and it.
Yeah,
I think that's what triggers me. Relate a lot of relationship shows. It triggers me a lot. So I tend to not watch those kind of stuff. Go to somewhere much that's much lighter. Even it's about relationship, but it's just light. It's
mm,
nothing you probably experienced before, just something just different. And I think turning off the TV and probably taking a break from social media as well is a good way to calm down your triggers. Because if you notice, if you're on social media all the time, it can
of
drain you as
course.
well. So I
Mm,
definitely don't stick myself to, if I started to feel a bit anxiety, I just take everything off and just sit in quietness and probably tidy my room. And it's very important to have a tidy room if you have a
mm,
mental illness. I think, I don't know, some people ever heard kindness and godliness, and it's
mhm.
so true. When you're around a very clean environment, you feel more in control. You can think more clearly. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
that's where that diffuser comes in. I tell you, when you got that peppermint scent coming in the bedroom. Whew.
ah,
But yeah, you're definitely right. Especially, so I think there's definitely been a few funks with me in the pandemic. The first thing that I tell myself and to everybody else is obviously to be gentle to yourself. We are all in a very weird circumstance now where we are living in a way that is our social being. So to be kept cooped up in our homes for extended periods of time can be quite challenging. A lot of my anxieties, if I feel particularly anxious, will be work. Um, Especially with my NHS job, there's a lot of sensitive information and vulnerable clients and things of that nature. So there's lots of worries about, is this right? Is that right? Is this
oh my
a
God,
lot of
yeah.
that? To the point where, sometimes I'll have to, I've written on a Friday evening after I finish work, wrapping it up, being like, everything has been completed. Every client has been taken care of. You do not need to worry about this until Monday or wherever it might be. So putting in systems in that case. Um, Again, exercise is something that I do when I'm feeling particularly anxious, because if I don't get my sleep, then I know something is wrong.
Hmm.
In terms of low mood as well, I can see that there's a question around depression. So why is depression so common during the holidays? There's a lot of different reasons for that. I think first of all, it's important to say that, especially with like a CBT approach to start off with, the idea is that activity and even the types of activities that you do can influence your mood. So if you're not really doing much, if you're sitting around, you might be on furlough or unemployed, there isn't a sense of connectedness with others, so you're not socializing, you're not doing routine activities, so you're not really, tidying up after yourself, as you've mentioned, things like that. It's obviously going to influence your mood.
Hmm.
So being able to do some activities that make you feel good in yourself as well, making sure that you are, even if you're not leaving the house, up to date with showering and cleaning up your space and reaching it out to others. Connectedness is a huge thing at the moment. And then also, I think a lot of people are stuck with sort of things that give them joy and pleasure, because a lot of the things used to be, things outside. So it can be socializing, drinking, it can be doing sports, lots of things that we can't necessarily do now. So it's always about being creative with some of the activities that you are doing to. So yeah, in terms of depression around this time of year, first of all, family can be quite triggering and very different, especially for queer people of color,
Mhm.
especially because there's obviously high risk of there being rejection, discrimination, and things of that too,
Mm.
which may not necessarily be happening to them right now, but it could have been something that they experienced in the past. And so obviously when you have holidays where it's very much family orientated, a lot of rumination, a lot of things, a lot of anxieties can come out of that as well. It being darker is obviously a big thing too, especially with low mood. It's colder, people want to stay inside more, less activities. And this time of year is just always one of those, I think, especially to the end of the year, everyone always thinks, what have I done this year? What have I achieved? What's been going on? And lots of times I'm one of those people, but I don't get mine at the end of the year. I get mine in around my birthday. That's when the anxiety starts to like kick in. Yeah, there's quite a few reasons why there might be depression at this time of year, but again, it is normal. Be gentle to yourself. We're in a pandemic. If you want to go on TikTok for 3 hours like moi, then do so. However, if that's all you're doing and you're not talking to anybody else and your room is a hot mess, then maybe take a little break and take care of yourself in that sort of section. And then you can go back to stuff like social media if you want to.
Well, adding to that, I think a lot of people, since the holidays, since during the lockdown, I guess everything's done online. And I think this is a great way for people who are too busy to go out to uni. This is a great way to sign up for a course because it's online course, especially those who have a degree already and you want to do a master's. This is the best time to sign up to do a master's course because you'll be online. I know some people don't like online.
Oh yeah, no, I'm one of those people. I
Yeah.
was one of those people that at the end of my PWP training, we were in lockdown and my motivation to complete any assignment was gone because I programmed myself for years to go to the library to work. I didn't want to be one of those people where my room was my place of work and relaxation and stuff like that, because it just never, like, there's no boundaries. Although it's harder to have boundaries, you either stay up all night working or you don't work at all, you just stay in your bed and you do nothing. So the library for me was like my place. I would literally go to the library, even if I knew I only had to do work that would take me 20 minutes. I was like, nope, I'm not doing it. So for me, I was the complete opposite. I was like, if it's online, it would only be like a 2,000 word essay. And I'll just be like, I don't know who that is. I don't know what, I don't care. I'm done. So it was a real struggle.
I think the Open University is doing quite a lot of short-term courses as well, such as learning a new language, French, Spanish, Germany.
That would be good.
That would be really good. There's financial short courses, mathematics short courses, English, loads of management, business. I think that is a really good tool to help with your anxiety, getting something to do, which is only short courses, so it's nothing that has to prolong for a period of time. So I think that's a great idea. I think we saw a message here. Can you share some of those CBT tools to help someone listening manage their holiday, home stress, and mood? I can add to that as well, and then Lewis can follow. I think I have seen a CBT therapist before in the past, and I think one of the tools that she told me to manage my anxiety and depression was to write things down, write them down, and process if there are things that can be changed. And if they can't be changed, I would just have to move on to something else that can be changed, which I think is a great tool for me. And I would say try and be easy on myself in terms of some people that are anxious, they don't eat as well. The appetite goes really down, and try and eat a fruit in the morning. One fruit in the morning is a good step. It's a little step, but it's a step of getting something in your body. You know what I mean? Even if and having snacks a couple of hours, just light snacks, nothing heavy. I think are really good CBT rules, and those relaxation techniques I told you about as well. That was recommended from a CBT therapist to go on YouTube and just something that can relax your muscles and your mind. It's something that I think has been very effective in my changing behaviors. So definitely that's something you could try. Maybe Lewis, being a well-being professional with the NHS, he has, has some additional techniques to add on to that?
So I think the first thing that I would always want to tell people is reach out to a mental health professional. We have IAP services. So IAP stands for Improving Access to Psychological Therapies. And they're in every borough and they're across the UK. So these are services under the NHS, so they are free, where you can go there, be assessed, and you can obviously have something a little bit more tailored towards you in terms of treatment. One thing that lots of people don't know as well is that you can actually get self-help books prescribed by your GP as well. There's a series called Overcoming series, and that's like overcoming depression, all different types of anxieties, low self-esteem, a lot of stuff that you can get prescribed by a GP too, which is obviously very important. And then in terms of this question around for someone being stuck at home, dealing with depression, how can they manage their mood or improve their activity? And this individual has mentioned that they tend to move from room to room and it helps them to navigate away from the energy that is pulling them down. I think it's really important, first of all, to recognize and trust your own process. So if you feel like you benefit from moving to different rooms in order to negate or navigate away from that negative energy, keep it up, keep doing it. One of the things around CBT in particular is this idea of, in my opinion, being more of a human doing rather than a human being. So Philippa, I know you mentioned with anxiety, for example, that if you have an anxiety, if you have a worry, write it down, determine whether or not there's something you can do about it. So it's that concept of letting go. You will either think it's hypothetical and think there isn't anything I can do about this. Is it confirmed? Is this something that's going to happen in the future? Either let it go by distracting yourself, or it might be something practical. Anxiety is a huge barrier for depression. A lot of worries around whether or not I can do this thing, and will people judge me? I might fail. Take it a day at a time, and whatever you want to do, write it down, and then break it down into smaller goals. So lots of I work with clients where it can just be a goal in itself to brush their teeth maybe every other day. So really breaking down the tasks and the amount of activity that you are doing, and don't feel embarrassed about it, because at the end of the day, you're putting yourself in the right direction. And of course, the more you do it and the more persistent you are with it, you are learning the tools of being able to manage your mood. And obviously you'll build up, and you'll keep building up upon sort of the progress that you've made as well. So yeah.
I think it's a question from Harvey. I know waiting lists are often an issue with certain individuals. IAPT services are thought to be widespread, but there are often still barriers to accessing care. Where do these barriers come from?
I think the main barrier is that people don't know what IAP services are. I mean, obviously I work in mental health and psychology, and I know that IAP service is huge. However, if I talk to members in my family, I think even on Saturday, my cousin was mentioning challenges around mental health, and they'd never heard of an IAP service before. I've reported. I've suggested that friends use IAP services as well. Again, having no idea what it is. I think that obviously waiting times is a challenge, but if you're not waiting for change, then or waiting for change, you're still doing something, essentially, and even the act of you referring to the service is quite self-caring, and it can be quite therapeutic. I have a lot of clients where as soon as I may assess them, and then when they have treatment for the first time, they feel a lot better. And I think it's just that idea that they've helped themselves. They know that if they're going to, if they've made this assessment, or if they've come in for an assessment, they're taking their mental health seriously. And therefore it's something that can be quite helpful to them. in terms of other barriers, I know Harvey's probably thinking, when's this little man going to talk about race and sexuality and stuff and gender and things of that
I was
nature as
about
well.
to do that.
We're working on it, okay? The IAP services, obviously, they are there to improve access, and that also means having to, I wouldn't say recalibrate some of maybe the stigmas around mental health, and also again putting the IAP services out there. So for the one that I work for, or the borough that I work for, they're quite central. And so there's a lot of community outreach. But the reason why there's a lot of community outreach, although it is amazing, is because there's a lot of different communities that aren't being reached. Yeah, that's the whole point of community outreach. But it's essentially the idea that there are a lot of different communities that we are reaching compared to in other boroughs. And there's a lot of other things that we take into consideration, like lots of things like working with interpreters and people with different types of disabilities, physical or like, chronic disabilities and things of that nature as well. A lot of barriers that people may not think about in terms of therapy, where you just think it's just you talking to another person, but there is a lot more that sort of goes on there. I would also just say as well, just representation is always a challenge. Psychology is, surprise, surprise, heavily dominated by middle class white women. In my previous service, I was shocked. I was gagged to go into the office, and there were so many Black people. All the counselors were people of color, Black, yeah, mainly Black, yeah. I think one was mixed race, but I think the rest of them were all Black. Counselors, straight Black men. I didn't even think that that existed. I was literally like, so we are out there, but we're still a minority. So
Yeah.
need some more practitioners out there.
I would say appro cultural appropriate treatments as well. As in you have Black and Asian people that enter these services. Even though as a Black person you enter the service and it's a Black therapist, the
Mm-hmm.
Black therapist might have parents of Jamaican descendants, but they were born here.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they tend not to understand the full cultural aspects of a Jamaican person or, of an African person. I think getting people, primary descendants as well, primary
Mm-hmm.
people who were born in other countries and over here, and they understand the different aspects around mental health and how it perceives around their culture. I think that's very important as well in mental health services. Not because you are Black or Asian doesn't exactly mean they'll understand you completely,
Of
because you have
course.
some people that just they don't connect with their culture or their tradition anyway. Do you know what I mean? They just live
Mm-hmm.
in English life, and I think that's very important to get others that was actually born there and have some sort of that was raised over there as well, and understand Jamaican cultural traditions. I think that's probably another subject to do talk about, but I think that's very important as well. Um, there's often the assumption that people of color want people of color practitioners. I can imagine this isn't always true. Do you have any thoughts on this? Um, I guess so. I guess there are some people that don't mind that if the person is of a different race, but it seems to tend to more to help when someone is the same race, especially when having family issues as well, and especially being LGBT and having a culture that don't accept who you are.
Mm-hmm.
It is best to actually have someone who is of the same culture as you to help you, that will help you even more because they will understand the issues more than someone
Mm-hmm.
who's not part of your culture. So even though there's people that don't want the same color, it actually would be the best option for you to do that
Yeah.
because there's more understanding, there's more connection. Do you know? So what is your
Yeah,
take on this, Lewis?
being targeted again. So there are definitely pros and cons to it. I think that you've definitely outlined a lot of the pros. I think in terms of likeness, sometimes practitioners, not practitioners, sometimes like service users or people may not feel comfortable working with somebody that is part of their, that they identify with or share similarities with out of the fear of judgment. So it can be, I mean, from my own personal experience as a practitioner, if I meet another queer person, or let's say specifically like a gay man, it can either go two ways. They then feel comfortable and they know that they can use certain language around me and I'll instantly get it without having to ask, or they fear that I'm going to judge them because I'm also part of that community and understand how things might work and things of that nature too. There's a lot of different dynamics there. I think from my personal experience, I have a counselor who is a gay white man, and we've spoken a lot about sort of like the racial differences. And I think one thing that I've learned from him, which I also echo with a lot of my clients, especially if we don't share the same sort of I don't know, ethnicity, race, whatever it might be, is not to play dumb, but to also ask people what it means in their experience. So, for example, this is going to be such a weird example. But I remember early in therapy when I didn't know any better, my therapist would ask me like, "How do I feel?" And I'd be like, "Ugh, I just feel gross." And he obviously understands to a certain level what gross means, but he has to understand it through my perspective. So he will still ask me, "What does gross mean?" And at first I used to look at him and be like, "I'm paying you how much an hour and you don't even know what gross means," and things like that. And it's the same idea with certain language and certain ways of cultural differences, understanding it um, from the person's experience. So Philippa, both you and I are Jamaican. However, I'm second gen. So it was my grandparents that were born in Jamaica. My mum was born in London. I was born in London. Our things going to be very different. Our experiences are going to be very different as well. So if I was working with you, I'm still going to be asking you questions to understand what your experiences of it are. So that is a resolution to sort of having people there with likelihood. Sometimes you might get a bit too comfortable and think that you two, that we share exactly the same
Yeah.
experiences, and
Yeah.
we probably don't.
Yeah. I think that's the whole point of being a professional, knowing knowing your boundaries as well. Yeah, I think you mentioned something about even like someone of ethnicity not wanting to, be in that situation with another person, but that's not exactly ethical as well as a therapist. So I think that's a different issue. That's the therapist themselves needing to remember that they're a health professional and they're there to help people, and not because that person might be Muslim or Christian, just like you don't want to do this, but you just have to remember there are ethical protocols that they must follow.
Yeah.
So I think that's just a different issue altogether. However, said unfortunately, the evidence base around this is lacking. It would be good to see more evidence around this.
Are you adding to my caseload, Harvey? Is that what you're doing? Would you like me to do another report for you?
Actually, there
I'll
is
do it.
an article, Harvey, Dawn Edge, I think from year 2016. It's not LGBT particularly, it's not LGBT, but it's around Black Caribbean people who suffers from schizophrenia. And I think she suggests a cultural appropriation implementation, something around that, for Black Caribbean people when they go to seek help. So probably have a look around that. Dawn Edge 2016. Just put Black Caribbean schizophrenia and she will just come up. Yeah, so just have a look at that article.
I'll be having a look at that one too.
It sounds like ultimately the service user will respond better and receive better help when they feel safe and understood. For LGBT people of color, that may be harder towards options may be limited in the UK.
That is very true. And again, pros and cons. I mean, as I mentioned, my therapist is white, and it can actually be helpful for him to a certain extent not know what my experiences are, or to visit. Like, I look at him and obviously I don't think he grew up in a Caribbean household, for example. So I explain to him these things, and I know that it can be very taxing and it is sort of emotional labor to explain certain things, but then to a certain extent, when I explain it, he knows that it's coming from my experience. Because again, me and you, Philippa, would probably have different experiences of something that might be the same topic. So in
Yeah.
that case, it can be good, for sure. And also, we both do a lot in academia. So we're constantly having to explain ourselves, especially to white populations as well, and trying to navigate a space essentially on how to talk about racism in non-threatening ways. So we are already pros in this.
We have a question. Can you give us some tips to manage mental health well-being during the pressures presented in this Christmas season? I would say if you're stuck with family, as I said, try and do something as an individual. Not everything has to resolve around your family. If you're having issues, especially as a LGBT people of color, try and find what you're good at, and probably even stay in your room and make it an environment of your own, some environment that you're comfortable with. You can even have like the artboard that I suggested earlier with the painting in the corner. So as you wake up, you see that. And I would say try, as in my tips are looking, even though I don't have any issues at home, but sometimes when I do get anxious by myself and my mom's in another room, but I want to do something, as I said, I naturally go on Tasty to see if I can get anything. Probably take a quick walk to the supermarket and
Mm.
try and make a very luscious flan or an apple pie, or well, I'm planning to make an eggnog for Christmas. And I got that from
Very
Tasty.
merry.
Yeah, I got that from Tasty. Um I will be doing that this Christmas. It's a promise I've made to myself and my mother that that will be going down in the kitchen this Christmas.
That's good.
What about you, Louis?
So I think there are two things. The first one's going to be very challenging, and probably, and this is on the assumption that the holidays are, there are pressures because you will be seeing family. So my challenging sort of thought or suggestion is to not go, to have boundaries. We are in a pandemic where realistically it's a great excuse to say that you don't want to go to your family's
Mhm.
dinner if you know that it's going to be, anxiety provoking or cause more low mood. Really having to sit down and think, am I obligated to go to this? Am I getting anything out of this? And in terms of setting boundaries, it's always the most challenging and anxiety provoking the first time you set a boundary. Of course, you not going to Christmas, for example, might be a statement, but it may also set a tone. If your family is going to be quite challenging, you don't have to go there. Everybody that's watching this hopefully is 18 plus. You're an adult. You can
Yeah.
make your own decisions.
Yeah.
But again, that's not the case for everybody. If you are living at home and you are in a challenging environment, then of course reaching out to others can be a good thing too. Social support is obviously very good, especially among the queer POC community as well. There are going to be lots of people that find it challenging, and being able to reach out to others, even if, and I suppose this is a tip, I suppose it's easier for you to reach out to others asking if they are okay, right, compared to reaching out to others and say that you are not okay. But
Mhm.
at the end of the day, they both start a similar conversation. So
Mhm.
being able to reach out to others, especially during this time, can be really helpful for support. And again, um, you know, make your space tidy. Go
Yeah.
get a diffuser. Go get that lemongrass oil or whatever it might be, and try and do things that make you feel connected, or excited or whatever it might be as well, to kind of keep your head afloat through this dark and crazy time.
Yeah, definitely. I think I guess even if you have no choice but to stay with family, I guess you don't have to continue any conversation about your sexuality with them. Like it's none of their business. If they bring it up, just kindly say, I would not like to talk about it. Can we please talk about something else? That and just shut it off. Sometimes I know it's family, but even if it's your cousin or whatever, in the face is quite very effective to keep you quiet.
Yeah,
Mm.
I mean, a lot of the time as well, you would get people where it's the elephant in the room. So it's something that is explicitly not spoken around. So you might get your grandparents going all the way around the room. Oh, how's your boyfriend? How's your girlfriend? How's your boyfriend? How's your girlfriend? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to you, it's just like, okay, and how is university going? Or something like that. And again, it's just thinking about whether or not you will be boundaried enough to if you'll be boundaried enough to go and still feel sane, or feel lighter afterwards. But
And don't
um,
forget, you have some people who think that they have to be, even when the person is very intimidating to you and they're in your face and they're not respecting you at all, one hand in the face will effectively stop them. You're thinking about, oh, I need to respect my elderly, but don't forget your mental well-being is very important as well. And when you lose your mind, they're not going to help you find it. You have to find it on your own. So always remember to put your mental health first. And if it's too much for you, in the hand and just walk away. I think it's very effective anyway. So
yeah,
we have to wrap it up. But thank you for joining us today. Thank you for the participants that was asking us and keeping us occupied during this event. And Merry Christmas. Have a happy new year and keep safe.
yes. So I'm just going to also mention before we do sign off, that tomorrow is Wednesday, and we are basically going to be Black Beetle Health. I will not be doing, I won't be grilled tomorrow, unfortunately. But tomorrow will be an in-depth look at eating smart during the festive season. So, eating that macaroni and cheese in consideration. How do we do that? We're going to find out tomorrow. And then tomorrow, then Thursday session will be looking about grassroots funding. So I know there's a lot of questions on how to start that. New year, new you, new organization. That'll be good too. And then Friday, we're going to be discussing a little bit more around equality. So yeah, stay tuned.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Merry Christmas. Bye.
Bye.